This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, everybody, and to all of our viewers around the world. We are here watching this Natal spurfowl down in the Timbavati River on Ngala, and we are currently looking for tracks of that pride of lions that we had last night. So come and join us, and welcome to your very own live African safari. So, like I was saying, we are currently looking for tracks of those lions. We were quite lucky. We chose a road as we left the lodge, and within about 5 minutes we saw tracks of the whole pride walking down the road in the direction that we were following. So we thought we have to try and follow them and find them. The last set of tracks I had was on the southern bank, so to the right of us, and they were walking straight down towards the river. But at the moment, we haven't seen tracks of them crossing, which is a bit strange. I mean, it was only maybe about 40 meters away from the riverbed, and we came down towards this water. Just a reminder, my name is Eric, and behind camera is BK. And like I said, we are here on in the riverbed trying to find these lions. And it will be interesting to see what happened to them if they decided to change direction, because they were walking straight down the road, probably for about 400 or 500 meters. And then I thought it's going to be easy to loop around. It's nice and easy to see tracks of any animal in this soft sand. But like I say, still no luck. So we'll drive here for a little bit, and then I might just have to loop around to the last set of tracks to see where they decided to cut off the road. If we're lucky, maybe they just moved off into the bushes and lay down, and we find them within the next few minutes. Wishful thinking. I thought I saw a track there, but it seems to be more like a hyena. So also just a reminder to please send through all of your questions and comments to #WildEarth on Twitter and FC on YouTube. We love hearing from you, love answering your questions, so please send through as many questions that you have. See, so this, for an example, on the right-hand side over here is a prominent game trail that would make a lot of sense for these lions to move down towards. When they're walking, if they're walking on a road and they're walking straight down a line, they know this area so well, so they know which route to take them the most direct way. And these prominent game trails are things that they'll often walk along. And so, I mean, I'm sure that they would still be walking. I'm going to just have to loop around to make sure where those tracks headed off to. You know, one of the worst things that we can do is try and predict where these animals were going. And so look at the tracks and say, they're definitely going to that water hole. And then if you loop around to that water hole and they're not there, they could have changed direction and gone in completely the opposite direction. And so when we've got tracks, the best thing to do is just to take it nice and easy, stay on the tracks, and just make sure you know exactly which way the direction of the tracks are going at all times. So we'll loop back around. It won't take us too long to get onto the road where I saw the tracks. And we might just have to take a little walk around there to see if we can find where they're headed. Will be interesting to find out. I mean, last night we saw the Pride, so the majority of the members, and then we saw the lioness with her 2 cubs, and they were very close to one another. I'd love to know if they decided to meet up, or if they went their separate ways again, if they managed to make a kill sometime throughout the night. Lots of unanswered questions that we're searching for now. So this is our crossing point. We're coming up onto the southern bank of the Timbavati, and I'll see if I can show you some of the tracks that we found this morning. I actually think I've just seen some of the tracks. Okay, let me get out and show everyone, BK. So I think there's quite a nice explanation as to why we maybe missed the tracks initially. So there are 2 sets of tracks over here. So there's, what about here? Okay, so there's this one over here. And it's quite a nice clear track. So when we came down into the riverbed, we saw this. And I mean, it's been wet and you can see it's been disturbed over here. But the toes are very, very kidney shaped with claws on top. And so this is a hyena track. If I were to draw the back pad, it would look like that. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 toes and the claw marks. Right next to it, however, is the lion tracks that we missed a bit earlier on. So that is the back pad of the tracks with the 4 toes. And the reason we missed it is because it looks like they walked and then the condensation came and wetted the tracks and made them look a lot older than what it was. So when we were driving down here, the very clear hyena tracks popped out. We saw, hyena tracks, lions must have moved off. But it seems like they've already crossed the riverbed, which is good news for us. See, if we had missed that, we would be driving in circles for the next half an hour until we eventually found the tracks. This is the first time in about a week that the main part of the Pride has actually crossed the riverbed. So some of the other methods that we use for tracking, Hannah, is, sometimes we can use some of our sensors so we can hear, switch off, listen. If lions are marking their territory, we might be able to hear them calling as they call. And then, we sometimes find the tracks and then they disappear off into the block. And so the next best thing to do is just to circle the area. And then that might give us the ability to figure out, okay, they're in this spot. Now we just need to figure out exactly where within the block we need to find them. And with lions, they're the apex predator within this area. And so they'll often find, if they're walking, and wildebeest, Impala, whatever sees them will alarm call at them. So that's another thing that we can use to try and figure out where the predators are. And we're coming up to a nice open clearing just up here on the left. Sure. think now that the tracks have almost been rained on, it's going to make it a bit tougher for us to spot them. So, here we go. Okay, so we do have the tracks still. BK and I are going to do our best to stay on them and hopefully find you some lines this morning. And let's go over to Tswali and say good morning to them. Sorry, Station Zal's radio down. Any changes? Alright, welcome back and apologies for... there we go. I have just heard from the radio that they've just found 2 of the lionesses that we are actually looking for. And it seems like they might still be moving, and they are very, very, very close to the tented camp. And so we might slowly make our way in that direction to see if the rest of the pride is nearby. Remember, yesterday evening there was the main pride of lions, and in the morning they were seen without the 2 females, and then in the afternoon the females had returned. And so that might be the 2 females that have separated from the pride again to see if they can try and hunt. Okay, so the last tracks we had of them was actually cutting straight down towards where those 2 lions were found. So I'm assuming that it is the 2. All right. Let's go over to Tswali and see if they can say good morning this time.
Good morning and welcome to Safari Live, your very own live safari. Carry on. Good morning and welcome to Safari Live, your very own live safari from Tswalu, Kalahari. This is JP and Davi. And today we will be taking a short little bumble and see whatever comes up on our way. So our expectations for the morning, a little bit of change in weather as we come from the north. There's a fairly big cloud bank that has come in, which has created a nice cool day for the Kalahari. And as you can currently see on the camera, the Kalahari is exceptionally green, hence the name, the Green Kalahari. Paul, actually it makes life easier when we've got cool conditions, especially in incredibly warm environments like this. The animals actually tend to be active much longer, because quite often what we find of heat is that heat actually tires out animals, and therefore to conserve that energy they would rather go and rest up in the shade.
Right, so we're still making our way down towards where those lions are seen. It should take us only a few minutes to get there. And so we've left those tracks now. We're looking at them again, and there was, when we saw them on the road initially, it looked like there was a lot more lions that were coming. And then at that riverbed where I stopped to show you the tracks, it seems like it was only a couple, and they crossed the river, and then it seemed like they started cutting more in an easterly direction. And so I think those tracks that we saw are the same, or from those two lionesses that Marina has just found now. So I think the best bet is for us to go there, see which lions they are, and if they're on the move, follow them. We might be lucky to see if they're going to give one last attempt at a hunt this afternoon, or this morning at least. And if not, maybe they turn around and make their way back towards the rest of the pride. One of the special things is to watch that moment where the lionesses return back to the cubs, and you've got this whole reunion that happens, and the cubs are making lots and lots of noises, and you see they'll always sniff around the mother's noses and face to see if there's fresh blood. And if that's the case, they get incredibly excited, and they just start running and chasing and playing with one another. And if the mothers don't return with a healthy meal, then they sometimes are very vocal about it, and they just don't stop making noises. This weather seems to be a bit strange. I mean, we keep getting these pockets of blue skies, and we think, cool, it's going to be sunny and hot for the next couple of days, and then we wake up in the morning and then it's just cloudy again. But so far we haven't had any rain, at least in the last 24 hours. Now, this section of the reserve is probably some of the most dense habitat that we have, especially after all of these rains. The grass is growing nice and tall. All of the trees have got bushes. Arnold, I've been a guide on Impala for a little over 2.5 years now. We started in 2018 around July time, and yeah, so it's just over 2.5 years. And then before that, I was actually at Pinda with and beyond. I worked at Mountain Lodge for about 3 years. And so in total, in July, I would have worked for the company for about 6 years already. It's gone incredibly quickly. I mean, it just seems like the other day that I was on my training course. Yes, oopsie.
We're going to be meeting with two animals. Maybe control aircraft will join in a second. One animal, we would into the spigot, so there's only visual of one animal at the moment.
I'm not sure if you're hearing that radio, but Martin is giving us an update on those two lions. And it seems like, so we're just crossing the river, tented camp is off to the right of us, and then to the right of that is some big clearings that these two lions are actually lying down in at the moment. She did say that one of them has gotten up and moved into a thicket, and we can't see her anymore. So hopefully we get there in time to see that other one before she also disappears. Holly, we actually don't see too many snakes. Thankfully, I'm not the biggest fan. We do occasionally see it, but I think, these snakes, they'll sometimes move out into the road during summertime to bask in the sun. And the majority of the time, they'll hear us or sense us coming, and then they'll just slither off the road. The snake that I've seen most on Ngalas is an African rock python, and they are really, really big snakes. I mean, sometimes along the road over here, you'll see the head on one side and the tail hasn't even come out onto the road yet. So they are very, very big, and they grow to about this thick. And then the second most common snake I think I've seen is actually a black mamba. I've seen that probably about 7 or 8 times. I've seen 3 this season already. So they sometimes are out and about. But a lot of the time, I mean, we tend to miss them. If we're lucky, we'll see something like a vine snake or a twig snake. But they are so incredibly camouflaged. I mean, the tracker that I usually work with has got an amazing pair of eyes. And he'll be able to pick up on some vine snakes and twig snakes sometimes, but I don't have the skill set to see them. Clearing's on the right-hand side, so we'll just be driving and looking for a vehicle. Okay, so by the sounds of it, it doesn't look like they're up to too much. Both of the rangers that were there watching them have decided to move on and carry on with their day. So I think these lionesses are busy resting up at the moment. But good to see these impalas, and it's something to take note of. So it's a nice big herd of impala here, and it seems like it's all just males. But if these impalas are to continue moving in the direction that we're heading, those lionesses might see them and decide to try and give them one last attempt. Okay, so there goes the vehicle. We'll cut in now. Oh, so those impalas are actually very, very close. There's more impala on to the left. And we sometimes will even see wildebeest in this area. So there's potential. It's worth hanging around at least for a bit to see. Ah, there we go. Straight ahead. Oh, she's actually standing up at the moment. I think we might be lucky. There she is. Sure. That actually looks like it's one of the younger members of the pride, one of the young sub-adults. Let's go and have a closer look. And she's got a muddy lip, so she's obviously just been drinking at the pan. Heavily she's panting. Still got quite a spotty belly, so this is definitely one of the younger members of the pride. Looks like she had a relatively full belly, which is good news for the pride of lions. It's just strange to see her by herself. Usually she's at least with the rest of her litter. Just see her. I hope she hasn't gone to join. Oh, there she is. She is panting very heavily. I'm assuming these thickets are where the other lioness moved in and lay down. It seems like she's looking through the thickets down into the riverbed. Quite happy to lie down there. It's a fantastic way to start. It's not even 6 o'clock here at Ngala, and we are already watching lions. So whilst we try and figure out who this lioness is and where the other one is, there's a scorpion at Swali, so let's go over to that.
Okay. What we have over here is a scorpion, and we've actually been watching him for quite a while. And what I find quite fascinating is that he's actually been active for much longer than that they would normally do. So when we do find scorpions becoming active, it's generally at night, and also quite often on warm nights with wind, and that's when they will start hunting. Now, when it comes to hunting with scorpions, there's two main strategies. We find that there's those that are ambush hunters, and then especially with these, which are more venomous scorpions with the thick tails and the very small pinchers, they tend to be more active in terms of hunting. So this guy is going to have to find himself a meal or burrow, because in the daytime they do become food for a number of other species. And especially here in the Kalahari, this is one of the favorite meals of meerkats. And quite often when we do watch for meerkats, they will actually dig them out. So coming back to the sting that we have over here at the back, as you can see, it's incredibly large, thick tail, which will indicate that this is one of the Parabuphus species. This is one of our 4 families that we have in South Africa belonging to Parabuphids, and they are incredibly toxic. Some of the species that we have over here, such as the granulated thick-tailed scorpion, probably ranks as one of the most venomous scorpions in Southern Africa. And what we also find with the venom, that it's quite a potent neurotoxin, so it works in on the nervous system. So generally worldwide, all scorpion species are neurotoxic, with the exception of one species that is found somewhere in the Americas, which actually has a very potent cytotoxin, which works in on destroying tissue cells. So scorpions in general, they eat quite a wide range of different insects. They also will feed on millipedes. Sometimes they will also feed on red romans, however, which is known as a solifuge. However, they can also fall prey to these solifuges themselves. And then we also find that quite often they will cannibalize one another as well. Nice view of his tail. Here again, we can see incredibly small pinches in the front. So when Daniel, I'll just have to double check for you on that, but the last time I checked it was roughly 13 or 14 species, if I remember correctly.
Have you been watching Wild Earth and dreamt of being right there on safari with one of the guides? Well, now you can. Wild Earth is offering you a chance to buy a ticket to dream. You or a friend can hop on board a live Wild Earth show and join our guide on safari. The ticket is redeemable at any of our locations, anytime in the future. Only a limited number of tickets are available, so don't wait. Get your ticket now and start dreaming. Terms and conditions apply.
My name is Lauren, and I'm currently working in Djuma Private Game Reserve here in South Africa. I love answering your questions during the live safaris. It's my favorite part. It feels like you're on the vehicle with me, and I'm able to teach you exactly what you want to know. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, you must go to the live safari page and ask your question below the live feed. Welcome to my car. This is Wendy, and she's my favorite. She would love to have your name engraved on her so you can be with her every single time she goes on a safari here in Djuma. If you become a Wild Earth Explorer, you will have the opportunity to buy an engraved tag which we will attach to her. We will make sure to send you a digital picture to show you exactly where you are sitting on her. You will have front row seat in every single sighting.
We've seen these ellies really chase wild dogs before. Let's get into spot. There we go, here it comes. Look at that, isn't that amazing?
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Good morning, everyone, to a very rainy, wet day here in Djuma, but we're out and I see something that resembles the sun up there, which is good news. My name is Lauren. I do have Johan on camera this morning, and we're slowly making our way to the hyena den. Slowly, because if we go too fast, we get soaked in water. Now, the rains really came down, and we've had over 20 mils at least so far, and that means no off-roading. Going over, probably, sorry about that, and probably no going over certain dam walls. We just have to tread really carefully today, but that's okay. If the sun pops out and I do see blue sky, what that means is most of the wet, soggy animals will of course come out. They'll make themselves sort of visible from the thicket in order to dry themselves off, from birds right through to your leopards. So I don't know if the hyena den will be active, but it's worth a shot. It's worth trying to see if we can see them. Other than that, everything is absolutely soaking, and this is probably the moisture that the land needed. We've already seen a shift in the past 2 weeks in terms of insect life, and that's a good indicator of the amount of rain that has really fallen. But after last night, it's the heaviest we've had this season that I'm aware of. I really think we're going to start to see some changes in the landscape. And it's already so thick. Can you only imagine if it gets thicker and thicker here? We may never find any animals. No, I'm joking, of course we will, but it's already very dense. And it didn't get too barren the winter we've just had. Of course, the evergreen trees retain their leaves, but it really didn't get as barren as the year before, and that's because the summer last year we had so much water, almost too much. So the vegetation growth is just building upon that. We're almost at the den. I don't see anybody. I'm not expecting anyone because of the rains. Normally I can see a body or two by this point in time. Not that I can see anything through my glasses right now, to be perfectly honest with you. Not a soul. Everyone's hiding, which is exactly what I would be doing if I was a hyena. Not a soul to be seen. So of course we can't spend any time here, and we won't. We shall bumble on to see what else we can find. I think they will come out. It's maybe worth coming back to check in an hour or so. When you've got the rain roof on, you have to be very careful you don't reverse into a tree. Okay, no luck at the hyena den so far, but I'm going to bumble on and see what else I can find.
We're still following our scorpion, and what we're finding interesting is that they often detect food by movement of tiny little hairs in the bottom of their body, and they can also potentially pick up chemicals through those tiny little hairs. And they also use chemical sense to actually locate mates. And we've just been thinking that we will tell you a little bit more about how scorpions actually mate. So what these guys will do is that the males will seek a female, and once they've located a female that they would like to mate with, they deposit a little sperm package on the ground. Now the next trick is when it comes to mating is not being eaten. So what these males will do, they will grab the female by the front of the pinchers, and they'll start doing a little dance at the same time until he directs her on top of that sperm package, lifts her up, smacks her straight on onto the ground, and that enters her reproductive opening. Now, some species have also got incredibly long tails, and those species specifically will actually inject the female with some venom, which will not kill her, but will actually stun her for that moment. They will then very rapidly mate with her, and then the process as we explained, and then as quickly as possible, they will actually get out there before that they become the next meal. Nina, that's true. They have to perform a little dance ritual in terms of where the male will hold onto the female and then lift her and smack her down. The reason why they perform that dance is that he can direct her over that little sperm package, and in the same process keep her at literally pincher's length and preventing her from eating him. In this case, it will be a neurotoxic venom. Like most scorpions have neurotoxins. As we mentioned earlier, these toxins will actually affect the nervous system. So it is generally quite painful stings, and especially in terms of this guy, he'll probably rank as one of the top 3 stings in South Africa in terms of the potency of the venom. As earlier mentioned, there's one species in the Americas which has got a cytotoxin, which works on tissue destruction. So in general, we will say that neurotoxins are the most potent of these, and scorpion in this case. We also do get a number of other venom types, which we find in snakes, which is often known as hemotoxins, which we don't find in scorpions as far as I know. And these will actually affect the bleeding and blood. And that's typical of snakes, for example, such as boomslang and vine snakes, which possess that venom type. Sandy, this one I would estimate at approximately 10 centimeters in length. However, there is species that can exceed 15 centimeters in length, like the rock scorpions, who's got incredibly long tails.
just digging underneath little...
So we've dropped back down into the riverbed in the hopes of us potentially seeing those two lionesses on the bank. But it is, if you just look at that vegetation, it's very, very dense and thick in there. So I think that they might be in there for a while and we won't be able to see them. But because there's that young lioness, the one that we saw, there's a chance that the rest of the pride might still be around this area. There's actually a lion in the river. Yeah. Now you see it over there. And just managed to spot a white bit of her stomach. There you go. So you see it there. And again, full belly. So this might be the other lioness that we missed before we got there. But let's go and have another closer look. So that's cool. At least our plan worked out. And I've actually just seen 3 ground hornbills that are making their way straight towards that lion. So that'll be quite interesting to see. Might even be the same lioness that we saw a bit earlier on. Let's try and avoid all of these big deep holes. Just trying to get into a position where we can see the lion and the hornbills. And the lady, I don't think there's very many animals that enjoy rainy weather. I mean, certainly the predators don't. I mean, if you've ever watched a domestic cat, they don't like getting wet. It's the same for lions and leopards. And it makes the general game species quite vulnerable, especially because a lot of them rely on their sense of smell and their hearing. And I mean, if there's lots of rain, it creates a lot of noise with the raindrops hitting the leaves. And it just blocks their sense of smell. So they sometimes feel very, very vulnerable, and they don't like it at all. So I don't think there's any animal in particular that loves the rain. And so it's quite a cool shot with lion and 3 ground hornbills in the background. It's quite unique. But that's thunder, and it might be the same rain cloud that's coming from Djuma to here. Sounds like it's quite ominous. But this lioness has actually just noticed the ground hornbills, and she's watching them. The ground hornbills don't know that this lioness is here yet, though. And before she turned around, we got the chance to see her face. She's got quite a pink nose, so this is the same one that we saw drinking. So that other lioness is somewhere around this area still. And this is a section of river that we've come to check regularly in the last couple of days, because that lioness who split away from the pride hasn't returned, and we think that she's looking for a suitable place to give birth. She's one of the lionesses that were mating in September time. And 3.5 months later, she's looking to find a suitable place to give birth. I mentioned a couple of days ago that on this northern bank of the Timbavati, so behind where those hornbills are, there was a pride of lions that used to den there quite regularly. And so maybe she's going to try and utilize that same spot. This lion's not expressing too much interest in these hornbills, though. Just watching them. If she gets up and moves towards them, those hornbills are just going to fly away. So these 3 hornbills with such big red faces, they're all adults. In Linma, these hornbills are very beautiful, and we're so lucky at Ngala be seeing them quite regularly, actually. We've managed to find 2 nesting sites in the last couple of months. So we found one pretty much where I was showing you the lion tracks a bit earlier on, and then Dan found another nesting pair quite close to one of our boundaries in the east, still along this riverbed system. And I think this group of hornbills is probably the same group that's nesting close to where I showed you those lion tracks. And so they'll spend their day foraging. It looks like they're moving through the sand, looking for insects and grubs. So to me, these ground hornbills are endangered. And they've got very specific nesting requirements. So they like nesting in big, tall trees and large holes that are created. And they take a long time to look after their chicks, and so it's not like a bird who lays an egg and 42 days later the chick is ready to fledge. So it does take them a very, very long time, and unfortunately with a lot of agriculture happening throughout the whole of Africa, their natural habitat in space is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And these large birds, I mean, they've walked this ground quite quickly, so they do cover ground very, very quickly. So they need lots of space to move around and look for food. Looking at the 3 of them, that one in the foreground there, the front one, looks quite a bit bigger than the other 2. And that one might be the male. Does look like he's got a more thick-set bill as well. He's just picked something up. And a lot of the time, chicks from the previous season will stay and help raise the chicks of the male and female. So Dana, I think the lions might be curious. They've just flown. Look at the white on their wings there. Oh, that is such a beautiful sight. So they've flown away. And Dana, I think a young lioness, if she wasn't full-bellied, might express a bit of interest in those hornbills, but at the end of the day, those hornbills will do exactly that. They'll fly away and move off. And so a lion might want to just save its energy and rather wait for an opportunity where it might hunt something bigger, and it will provide more meat for it. So I think, when we saw this lioness first, one of the first things I noticed was how heavily she was panting. It looked like she was feeling quite hot and bothered having such a full stomach. And coming down into the riverbed like this, the soft sand was quite a lot cooler than the grass. And so maybe she's just come to try and cool herself down. See, she's still panting quite heavily, and there's that muddy chin that we noticed once she had something to drink. But absolutely no blood around her face that we can see. And so that kill might have been made quite early on in the evening, unless it was something small that she didn't need to get her head into the carcass to feed on. And so maybe something between the 2 lions, maybe something like a Impala, a ram that we saw a bit earlier on. Looks like she's getting comfy. And so if it were to start raining, she wouldn't stay out in the riverbed. She'll probably move back into the bank and just try and shelter herself in and amongst this dense foliage that we have on the bank here. Her whole body's shaking as she's breathing. So this lioness is a very good looking one, and I think this whole pride has got good looking lions. And she's already over 2 years old. It's amazing how how quickly the adulthood has arrived, I guess. And so I would probably say in another year or so, she herself would look to start mating with a male and start a litter of their own. And so within the 8 cubs, we've got 5 females that are all similar age. And so the future is bright for this pride. So, Jonathan, it depends on how full they are. You know, if they've just killed a big buffalo and they've completely gorged themselves, they'll sit and not move around at all. Now, this lioness, although she's got a full belly, she'll take an opportunity if it presents itself. You know, so she won't actively go looking for something to hunt, but if she was in the thickets and a herd of impala were to come and cross this riverbed, she probably wouldn't be able to help herself. She'll just get up and she might give it a half-hearted attempt. If she catches something, then she's got a spare meal, and if she misses, she hasn't really put too much effort into it. So I also think these lions approach it in a way that they never know when their next meal is going to be. Hunting is hard, and these animals are so alert. They understand the threat a lion poses, and so these lions have to do everything in their power. They have to use such a skill set to approach these animals. They have to get as close as possible without them noticing. So they have to use wind, cover, and that whole time their muscles are tense as they creeping and stalking forward towards these animals, and so they use a lot of energy. And sometimes or a lot of the time actually, they miss, and they could go days without hunting or without successfully hunting. And so she'll take an opportunity if it presents herself. And in fact, I've seen it a number of times where we've followed lions to a fresh kill. And whilst the cubs were hunting, the lionesses looked up and immediately went after and caught a wildebeest. There's also times where you see a pride of lions. It happened in Pinda when I was there. There was a pride within the northern part of the reserve who I think in one hunting session caught 6 inyalas between 7 or 8 lions. And quite crazy. So I just was listening to a noise that was coming from a distance. I thought it was a leopard, but it's actually it was actually a roller that was calling. So Andreas, hyenas won't go after a fully fed lion unless that lion is sleeping next to a carcass that those hyenas want to try and steal. But the hyena, if it was walking down here and spotted this lion, it might investigate to see if there is food. But then ultimately, one hyena is much smaller than this lioness, so she might weigh in the region of 140 to 150 kilograms, so 300 pounds around about. A hyena might weigh 140 pounds, so about half the weight. And so if it's by itself and sees a lion, it's not going to stick around. And it's going to maybe just investigate to see if there's a meal. And if there is, it might spend some time trying to rally other members of the clan, but it's not going to actively go after and target a fully grown lioness like this. If we get into a situation where the lioness I was talking to yet gives birth, and she leaves the cubs by themselves, and then they will be incredibly vulnerable to hyenas. And that's why she gives birth in such dense areas, so areas where she thinks the cubs are safe. And to try and stop the hyenas from following her scent, she'll move them every couple of days, especially when they're brand new. So she'll move them maybe once or twice a week, and then, if they aren't big enough for them to follow her, she has to leave them to go off and hunt and drink and restock, make sure that she's fit and healthy to provide milk for her cubs. And then from the age of maybe about 3 months or so, or 2 months, 2 to 3 months, we'll see them moving around a lot more with the mother. There's a bird, and if you can hear this clicking noise, it's called a greenback Cameroptera calling. Right, so we might stick around here for a few more minutes and see if that other lioness shows herself. Otherwise, BK and I will carry on down the river to see if we can find tracks of the rest of the pride. And so whilst we do that, we'll send you across to Juma.
We found some animals. It happens to be some soggy baboons. In this guy, well, when we first arrived, he had his head in his hands. He looked utterly miserable. And although the weather's really not great, and I'm slightly worrying about what's rolling in from the south right now, at this point in time when it's dry, a lot of, well, species with hair, so let's go with mammals for now, and feathers, will be trying to shake off that rain. It'll be weighing them down, it'll be making them cold, So a lot of them will be getting mobile and trying to dry off. Now the sun's not exactly shining, but they'll be doing their best. And it's a good time to catch a leopard be mobile as well, because they will be absolutely soaking. So they'll be trying to shake all the water off and walk a little bit to get a little bit warmer and get rid of that excess water that's sitting on their bodies. So it's actually quite a good time to find animals. But I do think we're in store for another storm. 4 cheetahs have just caught something on the Manguleti boundary, so we were about to race up there, but they've headed north into Manguleti, so we're keeping our ear close to the radio, and if they come back south again into Buffelshoek, we will race up there and see who these 4 cheetah are. A coalition of 4 boys. I had 4 boys a few months ago on Cheetah Cut Line, which was just the best moment ever, saying on the radio, "Good afternoon, mobile stations. We have 4 cheetah on Cheetah Cut Line." Loved every minute of it. And I wonder if it's the same 4 boys. Again, I'm speculating. They were skittish, and these 4 boys in Manguleti have been called in as being skittish. But it leaves prospect and potential for this afternoon. Oh, the sky looks very sad. Why are you sad? Glenn, you're saying, love me some baboons. Yeah, I have to say I love a baboon sighting. They're highly entertaining. Highly intelligent animals, as most primates are. But they have quite a complex social structure. And the more complex the social structure, that directly correlates to the level of intelligence. But I still stand by the statement, any animal is as intelligent as it needs to be. In order to navigate their own landscape, use their own sort of sensory world, have their own Umwelt, which I talk about regularly, they have to be intelligent. Even a mosquito. Even a very slow African land snail. They all have to be intelligent to navigate their world in their Umwelt. But of course, primates are well known for their intelligence. But they're born very altricial, so they're very helpless when they're first born. And they take quite some time to develop. They go from infant, when they're first born, extremely altricial, to juvenile when they get a little bit older. Then they go to adolescent, and then adult. And they're not too unlike humans in that they're constantly learning through observation, learning through the parents and the other baboons in the troop. And that's the one benefit of being in a community. You're learning from others. What are they responding to when they see a threat? What are they eating? How are they seeking shelter? Oh, there's a knob-billed duck. You be careful, Mrs. Nobby. The baboon would not attack this duck, but I still would not go that close. Levi, I don't actually know. I've got my glasses on, but it's very difficult to count. It's a large troop. I haven't actually counted the individuals. They're quite far away. This is long-distance visuals. We're not allowed to off-road today for obvious reasons. We're going back to the sad one with a large stick in front of his face. But I think it's quite a large troop. Angie, you're asking what is the difference between baboons and monkeys? They're entirely different species. They're all primates, of course, but they're completely different species. I guess that would be like asking What's the difference between leopards and lions? They're related, of course, but they're extremely different. And we get the vervet monkeys here. We sometimes see them on live drive, and they're very, very small. They're so much smaller than these baboons. These baboons, the males at least, can weigh up to about 40 kilograms. That's quite substantial. The females, less so. The females can weigh up to about 18 kilograms, so that's half. But they're just completely different species in the same grouping, primates. I imagine they'll be looking for breakfast right now. Linda, you're saying you want to give him a hug. Good luck with that. I think that would be a very interesting hug. But yes, he just looks so sad and miserable. With his legs open, his head down, he's sitting like an old man on a park bench, contemplating life. I'm massively anthropomorphizing here. I think he's just resting. Still not fully woken up from that awful night he had last night with the torrential rain. But baboons are not territorial. You will find them in the same areas that deliver the resources that they require. But they're not actually territorial, so you won't see them marking territory or performing any behaviours that relate to that. They're roamers. So we got asked this question yesterday, but they'll just roam. If this area near our camp is not providing for them... Oh, we're playing the guitar. Air guitar. But if this area wasn't providing for them, it wasn't meeting their nutritional daily requirements, then they would just roam. And they would wander far in search of food and water. They're not going to limit themselves to a particular area. They will have home ranges. Every species out here has a home range. But territory is something different. A territory is actively defended. It's a species claiming that area as their own. And in order to do that, you've got to keep others out. You've got to defend it. Scent mark, call, scrape, patrol. Be extremely obvious. And it's just not worth the energy for baboons. So they'll have a home range, an area that they cover, that they roam, but they don't need to actively defend it. But if they did come across another troop, they would sort of shout and do a lot of baboon shouting and vocalizations. But they're not going to actively defend an area. The main fundamental part of a baboon's area that they will sort of be the most precious about is their sleeping sites. Predators would hunt baboons if they could catch them, so they're very precious about their sleeping sites, which of course involves trees. They sleep above the ground. So they don't necessarily return to the same roosting site every single night, but they will have specific trees that they favour for safety. You don't want other troops coming in, and you also want to avoid these spotted cats that can climb trees. And if they use the same tree over and over again, eventually it will start to smell. Now, this is not territorial marking, but this is obviously just through urination and defecation. They'll start to smell and become stained with the excrement, which is just lovely. And that's how they'll recognize those favoured trees over time. Did you get out on the wrong side of the bed this morning? I think one did. That was me yesterday. Lauren, You have a fabulous name. I love it. You're asking what kind of meat do they eat? Well, they're actually omnivores, and they're also fussy but opportunistic. So they love to eat fruit, but they normally go for the ripe fruit. They wait until it's ripe, and they can determine that through vision. They're highly visual beings. But, of course, if none of the fruits are ripe and food is not plentiful, they will eat unripened fruits. They'll also dig for bulbs. They'll gnaw on grass. They'll pick up seeds. But because they're omnivores, that means that they eat meat also. So they love to just pick up insects. And of course, summer delivers that. They can just walk along quarantine and guzzle up all the insects. They're also known to eat birds' eggs if they come across them. Small mammals. They've got this sort of dental formula to eat small mammals. I'm talking about maybe small bushveld gerbils, not necessarily large scrub hares. And they will also eat very small birds. This is most likely chicks, because chicks cannot really fly away. Whereas other birds, as soon as they see a baboon coming, they'll of course fly away. So they have a really, really broad diet, and they're also known to come into sort of human areas like camps and lodges and raid the garbage bins. Yes. Whether it's a baboon or a hyena, you've got to lock your garbage bins down. I remember, was it Swazi or was it Ribbon? One of them took our entire trash can and, oh my goodness, took it for miles. I'm sure we found it out on Drive. And the contents were everywhere. Mayonnaise tins were licked clean. Chickpeas, banana skins, whatever you can think of was consumed by, I think it was Ribbon actually, as far as I can remember. And baboons are the same. They will raid trash cans if they can get their hands on them. I could watch this guy all day. But a baboon's life, they're diurnal. It's not safe to be active at night time if you're a baboon. There's 3 priorities. 1, food and water. 2, play and groom, interact, you're social, groom each other, pick off all those nasty ticks and insects. Play, enjoy being part of a social community. And 3, avoid predators. There's lots of predators out here, from lions to leopards. Even wild dogs would snatch up a baboon if they could, a young baboon. And that's all your daily life consists of. It sounds great. This baboon's making me feel sleepy. Jared's saying it looks like a hangover. Oh yes, quite a severe one. What were you drinking last night, sir? It looks like quite a severe hangover. Jonathan, I would imagine they absolutely would recognize humans. Now, if you're referring to humans as a collective, absolutely. They are highly, highly visual, and they see in color. They have binocular vision, so their eyes are actually very close together, and that allows them to gauge for depth and distance because they jump from branch to branch to branch. They have to be very accurate or they're going to end up falling on their bottom. So yes, because they are so visual, I would imagine they will recognize humans by sight, not by scent or anything like that. But if you're asking, do they recognize us individually, I would think not. I mean, I definitely don't recognize the baboons individually. So I don't think they'll recognize us solely one by one, but as a collective, absolutely. We feature in their daily lives. Most species out here, at least mammals, and I would say birds, would recognize humans. When I run around quarantine every day, they react, they move, they see us, they watch. I'm pretty sure the impala laugh at me and how slow I'm running, but all the same, they're recognizing me. A bipedal man, a bipedal primate is probably what they see. Now, apparently the baboons were alarm calling around the dam cam at like around 5:15. So I imagine there could be a predator in the area, but unfortunately the rain stopped us from getting very far this morning. Leslie A. Farm. They're the biggest primates we see here in Juma. Between the chacma baboons and the vervet monkeys, we also see bush babies. Actually, Johan and I had the most incredible bush baby sighting the other night, but sadly we had no signal. And they're also primates, but of course they're not large. They're very, very small, the galago. But yes, the chacma baboon is the largest. That's wonderful. I think I'm going to keep scratching around quarantine to see if we can see any signs of predators. But we're going to send you across to Andrew for a beautiful moment at a waterhole.
so it seems like every time we come over to Impala, I'm dropping down into a riverbed. And I've done exactly that again. We left that lioness who was sleeping in the bank or on the sand of the river. And we decided to come back to make sure we could figure out where the rest of the pride's tracks were. So we last had them, I've just checked them again now, and they're right here. And so I'm sure they would have crossed the riverbed. And I just want to try and figure out exactly where. We do have another ranger, Yapi, who is coming to give us a hand. And between him and his tracker, especially having a tracker up on the front of the vehicles, is a lot easier to spot the different tracks. And so he's starting to do a zigzag pattern on the northern bank of the river. So he's crisscrossing in this direction, going up and down, and we're coming through this area to see if we can pinpoint where they were heading. This point is, I'll actually show you on the map quickly, just so everyone knows exactly where we are. And so this morning we left tented camp, and we basically went down this road. We saw the lion tracks over here, and then they went up like that. And then the two lionesses were seen very, very close to tented camp. So we ended up doing this. And now we're back in this direction here. So we're wanting to try and figure out if those lions have gone either straight up, potentially towards a waterhole over here, or if they've changed direction slightly and gone more in a northwesterly direction. And so Yapi's checking in this area, and I'm driving at this point along the river here to see if we can see if the tracks have crossed again. It can change direction. If they go in this direction, it can take us another 25 minutes or so for us to loop all the way around and get here. And so it's quite good that we've split up and checking two different parts of this area. So Woodland Kingfisher being noisy as ever. There we go. DK spotted him. Just back up quickly. There's actually two in the same tree. And BK will let me know when I can stop. Okay. Off they are. The most beautiful kingfisher. Just look at those different colors. They are incredible. And the other one is just above it. I think a bit further up. Yeah, there we go. So also the first time that I've been hearing them since I arrived. I left Impala, I think on the 14th or the 15th of November. And a couple of days later they arrived. And apparently they just arrived in full force. And so this is the noise that we'll be hearing right throughout summer. Very, very cool. All right. Don't want to get too distracted with all of the bird life, so I am going to continue on with the drive. See if we can find the tracks of those lions. Okay, so we've got another few hundred meters to drive in the riverbed before we hopefully find those tracks. So let's go over to Lauren, who's actually got some pretty butterflies to show you.
Quite a nice find for a rainy day here. We have a butterfly who is not fluttering on by because it's raining. I think it's the brown veined white from what I can see, but it's very difficult. We're not picking up any colours. This could be one of the paler ones. The African veined white is also very similar, so it's definitely one of the two, but I do think we have a brown veined white here. One of the more common species that we find. Probably The rain's too heavy, it started raining again, and it's too cold for this little butterfly to be too mobile. Both butterflies and moths belong to the order Lepidoptera, which in Greek means the scaly wings, because their wings are actually made up of scales upon scales upon scales, and moths actually have far more scales, and they shed their scales just like we shed our skin, and that's why when you touch a moth, it almost appears like some of the moth has moved onto your finger. It's almost powdery-like, and it's just the scales that are coming from the wings. They have much, much thicker scales. Now, it's a huge order, but only 20,000 of them are said to be butterflies. So the proportion of moths far outweigh the butterflies. And we talk about the different life stages because butterflies undergo quite the metamorphosis. And it's the pupal stage. And what the pupa is basically an insect that's in an inactive, immature stage between larvae and adult. So when it's a larval stage and it needs to transform to become an adult, there's a pupal stage, and that's basically what that word means. And for the pupal stage of a butterfly, that's when they undergo their dramatic transformation. They do this in a chrysalis, not a cocoon. There's a difference between chrysalis and cocoon, and what the sort of main difference is what it's made from. So because a butterfly, or a caterpillar, completely liquefies itself using digestive enzymes, the exoskeleton of that caterpillar, all insects have an exoskeleton. Where does that go? Does that liquefy? No, it doesn't. That hardened casing that's protecting the caterpillar, that is what they actually use for their chrysalis. So they're using a part of their own anatomy, if you like, to build the chrysalis, and they're liquefying inside. Now, a cocoon is an external structure. That's what moths build. They're not using their sort of hardened exoskeleton. They're actually building it separately. So the larvae of a moth are constructing their own cocoon. Whereas the butterflies, they're not constructing anything. They're just using that already hardened exoskeleton. So normally a cocoon is a lot softer. It doesn't harden like a chrysalis does. Very, very interesting question. There's a dark side to butterflies, shall we say. There's lots of different species that opt for different methods. Some of them are rather questionable to the human mind. Can you hear the rain? It's coming down quite heavy. But we are sheltered, for now at least. But the females will leave a pheromone trail. So butterflies actually have very good eyesight, but the females will pick up on, the males, will pick up on pheromones that are left by the females to find them. And very often they will meet in the air. They can mate mid-air, but you'll often find different species of butterflies mating abdomen back to abdomen. One will be upright on top and one will be upside down on the bottom. You'll find that that's how they mate. They'll hang on to the vegetation. But there's a species of butterfly, that actually doesn't even wait until the female has hatched from her chrysalis. He finds the chrysalis through scent, and lots of males will break into this chrysalis and mate with the female before she's even fully emerged. All of the males. It's quite disturbing. She's not even opened her wings for the first time in her life, and the males, they gang up on her and copulate with her without any choice. Forced copulation. There's a dark side to butterflies, that's for sure. But we do normally in summer here in the Lowveld, we do get to see lots of butterflies mating. It's a wonderful thing to witness. They just put their abdomens together. So their genitalia is together. The male passes the sperm onto the female. And then she will lay eggs. And that's the sole purpose of being a butterfly, is the adult form. When you're a caterpillar, your sole sort of role is to eat, which is definitely what I would be. You just eat, get bigger, get bigger. The bigger, the better. Keep eating. And then you're ready to undergo the transformation. Butterfly's sole purpose, of course, they need to eat, or drink, should I say. They mostly drink liquids through their proboscis. Their sole purpose is to reproduce. The caterpillar phase has prepared them to be an adult and to reproduce. Lay as many eggs as you can. And for the male, you must mate with as many ladies as you can, which I'm sure they're not complaining about. But there's a visual component as well as scent. Males will recognize their own species through vision. Marianne, I'm not sure why you think heavy rains would kill the butterflies. That would be in big trouble if all the butterflies died right now. But no, they would seek shelter. So this one's quite exposed here in this young cluster leaf. But if you maybe looking, there's not much shelter here. I can't give you a good example, but butterflies can also go under the vegetation. Maybe they'll find a log, or they can hang upside down from large, broad leaves, and therefore they'll avoid the heavy, heavy rains. Of course, when they're wet, the same as mammals, they'll be soaking, it'll be difficult to fly, but they'll just seek shelter. Definitely won't die. I'd be in trouble if they did. The rains here get extremely heavy. Now, to be a lonely butterfly out here, the males have got to really be sure to find a female of his own species. There's lots of species of butterfly to our naked eye that look similar. The males can't afford to attempt to mate with a different species or waste any sperm on a species that's not his own. So they've got to be completely accurate. They will recognize each other through sight, but chemical cues are going to ensure that the male does not mate with a different species of butterfly. And some butterfly pheromones that they release, we obviously cannot smell them, but they're said to be extremely powerful, and a male can sense them using his chemoreceptors, or smell them, should I say, loosely, from about 10 miles away. That's phenomenal. That's an incredible distance. And he can pick up that there's a female nearby, and he just has to find her. Insects live in a chemosensory world. If you're a tiny, minuscule insect and you've got to find a mate, you're not going to be able to rely on vision if your mate's 10 miles away, or sound. Some insects can be very loud, especially the cicadas, but generally speaking, acoustics could waste a lot of energy if you're a really, really minuscule insect, and therefore, what are they relying on? And it all comes down to the chemosensory world that they live in. Just opening his wings. Probably trying to dry off. Get those solar panels working. Okay, hopefully this rain subsides very shortly. I'm not enjoying being wet, but we are going to continue our bumble and see what else we can find.
An ever-increasing part of the global population is losing its connection with nature. Wild Earth is here to reduce people's stress and anxiety, allowing you to escape into nature even just for a few hours a day. However, Wild Earth is expensive to run, and we need help from you to keep this ship going. Wild Earth Explorers gives you the opportunity to be part of a program that supports the sharing of nature with the world.
I am David. I come to you live every day from the Mara Triangle all the way in East Africa. My favorite animal in African wilderness is the lion. Lions, here in the African wilderness, I call them kings of the jungle, because in general they are always up there while they control the savannas of Africa.
Catch up with the guides daily here on Wild Earth. Wild Earth is launching our brand new Explorer program with an opportunity to win a very special Wild Earth expedition. The lucky winner will get a behind-the-scenes Wild Earth experience at the magnificent and beyond Ngala Tainted Safari Camp. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend with a chance to sleep out in the unique Ngala treehouse. Become a Wild Earth Explorer and stand a chance to win this and many other prizes.
Terms and conditions apply.
My name is Ross and I'm a field guide at and beyond Punda Private Game Reserve. I love getting questions from guests on Wild Earth because I love sharing and learning information about nature with new people, and it also makes me feel like you're all joining me in real life. If you want to ask a question on Wild Earth, then you need to register on our website. Once registered, go to our live safari page and submit your question below our live feed.
Okay. At the moment we are at Chikudu Dam, and what we have over here is a little grebe, which is one of the 3 species of grebes which we find in South Africa. And it's also quite often referred to in the Afrikaans language as a dobbertjie, which translates into a float. As you can see, these birds appear very buoyant. They do fish for a living, so quite often you'll do see them diving underneath water, and then they'll just pop up, just like a little float. So unlike most other water birds, their feet is actually set very far back so that they can use their feet to propel themselves more effectively underwater. Quite a strange thing to see a little grebe trying to walk on land. We do see them coming out occasionally, but they're more at home in water. So one of the things that we also do find with them is that they're quite smart in terms of their nesting choices. Unlike most water birds, which will nest on nest platforms that they create close by to water, which doesn't have the ability to float, as that these guys will make nests that can float and can go up and down. And therefore providing them with the advantage that their nest doesn't become swamped if there's sudden rains that do come. One of the things that we also find with quite a few of the grebe species is that they will often also include a small amount of feathers into their diet to assist to basically create a little coating around the bones of the fish to prevent that there's damage in the stomach, and then these will be at the same time protecting the stomach lining and the throat. Well done, Gracie. It's always great to get a new bird to the list, and it always makes it fun to find new birds if you start taking up birding as a hobby. And it's always a good thing to keep a number of lists, life list, a provincial list, and even maybe a little list for your own garden to make it more interesting. At the moment, we were just waiting for some more animals to come down to come and drink, hopefully. It's been a little bit of a quiet morning. However, there is a few bird species that come in and out, and hopefully we'll be able to get a shot of some of the sandgrass as well as dove species that come down to come and drink as the morning progresses as well. Miley, my favorite bird is a grey wagtail, and basically any wagtail, if I have to think of it, simply for the reason that they always appear so docile and relaxed and in content with what they do, and you can almost see them anywhere, and they're just always happy to be wagtails. Leah, yes, sometimes we do get fish that will appear from time to time in water bodies that has actually been empty. And quite often the fish species that we do find in water bodies that has been empty and been filled up is catfish, because these little fish species, catfish has the ability to actually hide in mud, and then once that rains come and the dams fill up again, then they will come out of the mud and start living in the water and doing what they normally do. What we also sometimes find is that a lot of water birds will actually have eggs of different fish species that will get stuck to them, and then from there on, those eggs will end up in a new water body where they can potentially hatch. So at the moment, we're also having a look at a Blacksmith Lapwing. It's one of our lapwing species, and you can see they're fairly long-legged, and this one has got black, white and grey colour. And the reason why it's called a Blacksmith Lapwing is actually due to the call. And quite often we hear them providing a ping, ping, ping sound that sounds like steel that's being forged on an anvil by a blacksmith. So one of the things I find particularly fascinating about lapwings is how they're committed to taking care of their young. And we do know that this bird has a nest somewhere around here, which was found a few days ago. And what they'll often do if predators approach the nest, either too close to the egg or to the chick, they will actually pretend to have a broken wing, and they will distract that predator, such as a jackal, away from that nest. And once it's far away enough, then they will suddenly fly up as nothing is wrong with them. And hopefully by then that jackal or that predator would have lost interest in the bird. Now, what we also do find on lapwings is that they've got tiny little spurs on the edge of a wing, which they can also use as defensive weapons. Quite often they use it against one another or against an unwanted intruder that comes too close by to the nest. So we often refer to this as when a predator does come close by and is attacked, we refer to this as mobbing behavior, and the predator is mobbed and forced out of the area until it leaves. We often see mobbing behavior with quite a wide range of animals and birds. So quite often when the threat is detected, they would like to actually start following it, keeping an eye on it. We see it with birds where they will scold a little predator like a mongoose. We see it with baboons, vivid monkeys. Quite often when detecting leopard or lion, they will also start keeping their eyes on it, follow it in the trees, alarm call, and actually drive that potential threat out of the area. It's true for most grebe species that they do take tiny little feathers into their stomach to line the stomach lining to protect it against the tiny little sharp bones of fish that they feed on. We're back on our little grebe. It's just dived, and hopefully you'll be able to see how it pops up in the next moment. There it goes, and back up again. With little grebes, they're fairly common to find on water bodies, especially just water bodies that has filled up recently.
Well, we've not found any other animals just yet, but we will. We were on our way to First Rock, which is in Torchwood. Tandy's Mappin Pan, aka Cub, is sitting on First Rock, looking rather wet and soggy. But unfortunately, he's gone into the drainage where we definitely can't go. So I'll keep my game drive radio on, and if he pops out of that drainage, then we'll head over to Torchwood. But there's no point in us racing there if he's deep in a very, very difficult drainage line. But he's always on First Rock. Considering he was born on Juma, Tandy gave birth on Juma, and the den, the original sort of natal den, is Juma. But now both of them are always found around the First Rock area. And it's a very, very beautiful area, as you know. He really doesn't travel too far. And they, of course, move. They're mobile animals, but he really, really doesn't go very far from there. So that's why I'm going to leave my game drive radio on, just in case he pops out of that drainage and we can run and see him. We've all been trained out here quite extensively. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we necessarily don't see. And it's all about understanding the animal, their behaviour. That's the key thing, understanding their behaviour. And luckily for us, the leopards out here, we have a lot of leopards. Okay, I'm maybe not finding them, but the density of leopards here is incredible, and they're all really habituated, and habituation is important when there's so many vehicles. There's vehicles from lodges, there's wild earth vehicles, there's private landowner vehicles. The traffic can be quite, oh cute, is that little chicks? I think we've got little chicks ahead. I'll still answer your question, but that's very sweet. The Franklins have got babies. 3. Wet chicks. But yes, so the habituation process is really important. And of course, as I always mention, I guess there's a selfish element because we want to see the animals. And tourism, ecotourism, is all about being eco and sustainable, is very important out here. But it also benefits the animals. We don't want them fearing the vehicles. Really, that would not be good if they see a vehicle and they think, heart rate increases, cortisol, flee. Every time they see a vehicle, that would not be good. So most of the leopards, oh, hello. Hello, who are you? You're running, why are you running? Where are you going?
So we just keep us posted. We're going to head back to camp, but if the rain...
Where could you possibly be running to in such a hurry? A wet hyena, how delicious. I think this is one of the males. We're not going to follow him. We're not allowed to off-road. But once he heads further into the block, we're not going to follow him. At least we got to see one hyena today. I wonder if the den's worth checking. But yes, most of the animals are habituated, but animals like elephants, although they are semi-familiar with the car, you have to be really careful. Position yourself in the correct way. Always have a forward escape route when you're around elephants. Be cautious and careful of which way the wind's blowing and the weather. I know that sounds silly, but I've changed my mind. The weather plays a part. Animals can be agitated. Elephants get more stressed, or their behaviour appears to be that they're stressed in winter when resources are low. There's not much, that rain's starting, there's not much food around. Water levels are low. They become very stressed, and therefore they may take out their aggression, displaced aggression on vehicles. So just always be very aware. And out here in the bush, just why I'm not always looking at you guys, not only am I trying to find animals, but you have to be, your senses have to be heightened. And that was one of the biggest lessons when I came to the bush. As many of you know, I come from the water. Technically, we all do. But I come from being underwater, where you use very different senses. You do use your ears, but in a different way. You're more visual. You can't smell underwater. Your nose is also pinched in your mask. So when you come to the bush, you have to sort of train yourself to use other senses, to be hyper aware of everything that's going on around you. And just always be cautious. People will make mistakes. It's inevitable. Every single one of us, even the most experienced guides, will say, I probably didn't position myself in the best way, or I could have done that better. And it's not just for the guests on the vehicle, but for the animal. And that's how we're able to get so close. Through training, experience, and just reading body language, behavior, and understanding the species that you're spending time with. So same in any environment, you've got to understand the animals. And of course, we know our species, or a lot of them, individually. So it's not just a leopard. We know, that's Tingana. He's very relaxed. He's not relaxed on foot. Tingana's so chill, he'll literally sleep 1 meter away from your vehicle. He can hear your voice, he can smell you, he can see you. But the minute you step out of the car, you become something completely different. You become a bipedal primate, a threat, which is what we mentioned earlier. And he is not relaxed when you're on foot. This rain's getting quite heavy. Are you nice and dry back there, Johan? Dr. Rocky Balboa. Love it. You're all very creative with your names. Love it. Stuck in bed. Dr. Octobone. Sir 50. Dr. Rocky Balboa. Yes, really, one of the rules, oh my goodness. One of the rules of the bush, I think we have to stop and answer this question. At least I'm not wearing my glasses. I think everything is covered. No, it's not covered. Bear with me. It's not to wear cologne. It's synthetic. Poor Simon came here smelling so delightful. He used to wear lots of cologne. But we had to tell him, you must not wear scents that are too strong. So we wash, but that's about it. Okay, we're going to seek shelter here because it's far too heavy. And we're going to send you guys across to Andrew, who hopefully is also seeking some shelter.
At the moment, we're watching a number of doves coming in to drink while we're waiting for animals to come. And one of the doves that we have over here is a Cape turtle dove, as it's known, or as a ringneck dove by some. Now, what we often see with doves is that they're incredibly cautious when it comes to drinking. And what they do is they know that they're vulnerable when they're here, because they know there's predators such as lanner falcons and peregrine falcons, which is also one of the fastest flying birds in the world, that can potentially come and catch them. So at first they will land up close by, watch, see that it's safe, and then fly down to the water. Now, unlike most other birds, when it comes to drinking, doves have a very unique adaptation where they can actually directly sip up water, like as if they're drinking a milkshake through a straw, while other bird species have to actually tilt their heads back, then swallow the water, and then focus back onto the water with their head down to get the next a little bit of water before they can tilt their head back, which obviously leaves them quite vulnerable. So also, just as that we've been sitting here, there's a pair of Egyptian geese that has moved in. Davy is going to pan in on them for us. There we go. This is a fairly common species of duck throughout southern Africa, and you will notice that I refer to it as a duck. So technically in southern Africa, we only have ducks and no true geese. However, even in sub-Saharan Africa, Africa south of the Sahara, there's only one species of true goose. So when the early Dutch settlers arrived at the Cape, they named things after birds and things that they were familiar with. And because of the sheer size of this bird, it was referred to as a geese. So you notice that there's also the word Egyptian inside the name. So these birds used to occur in Egypt, and they were also quite commonly used in hieroglyphics. And what we also find is that Egyptian geese was often embalmed and placed inside the tombs with the pharaohs to accompany them in their afterlife. So what we found is that they were their sustenance for the pharaoh that was buried inside that tomb, but also to provide some form of sustenance to the birds and the animals that were inside these tombs. A small particle of food was also placed inside their throat before they were finally embalmed and placed inside these tombs. Some of the other species that we also find quite commonly inside these tombs were jackals, baboons, birds such as sacred ibis is another common species, and species of cats like African wildcat was also placed inside these tombs. So generally when we find Egyptian geese, they, in most parts of the year, they're in pairs. And these pairs, once they've mated, they've had offspring, they tend to be very territorial at this period of time. But later on the year, when they undergo a molt, where they replace all their feathers, you quite often see them forming large groups where they will share safety in numbers. So watching one another's backs, literally, by while they are undergoing that molt. But coming back, we often see with Egyptian geese is that they will actually, unlike many other species of ducks that nest on the ground, they actually nest in trees. And also on cliff faces, I found them as well. And with ducks, what we often find is that they will, once chicks have hatched, we refer to them as precocial young, which can go mobile directly. And we'll see that the parents will fly down, start calling to these chicks, and very excitedly, these little chicks will jump out of the nest, sometimes at heights of 2 to 3 meters, and then just simply float down to the ground. And from there on, never return to that nest, and they follow the parents from there straight towards water. So with most of these birds, which we refer to as altricial, and precocial in some species, where the altricial is dependent on the parent, where precocial young, such as the ducks, they can immediately start following and feeding themselves. In Afrikaans, we also refer to Egyptian geese as a kolgans, and as you can see, there's a spot underneath the chest of a bird, and that is the kol, where the Afrikaans name comes from. Yes, a waterhole is partially fed by a borehole, but what we also find is that it will, at this time of the year, when there's sufficient rain in the Kalahari, that the rainstorms will actually fill up these waterholes. At the moment, if we look at the picture of the one Egyptian geese, we can see a white wing panel. So generally when we see those white wing panels, it's because of them becoming agitated with another pair of Egyptian geese in the area. However, I'm not sure why they're actually doing this at the moment. In general, we consider it as a territorial aggressive signal to tell the other pair that they should stay away from the area. And if this warning is not heeded, the pair that has set it up territory along that water body will immediately start chasing the other pair out of their home. At the moment, we were just following up on wildebeest, which was snorting. Unfortunately, it moved off into a thicket, but while we followed it, we found this magnificent pair of kudu horns. So you can see over here, that's spirals, which is one of the reasons why we refer to them as spiral-horned antelopes. And they also have the record of actually having the longest horns of any of the antelope species. So quite often when we look at oryx or gemsbok, it appears to be much longer in length. However, the spiral gets taken in account as well when length is determined. So a few years ago, one of the records of a kudu that was sold in a game auction was one of the bulls with the longest horns on the record, and it was also one of the heaviest bulls on record. So to give you an idea that a bull like this can almost get up to 316 kilograms if they are full grown in size. So these horns are used quite often as defensive weapons against other males. However, what we also notice with kudu bulls is that they will also sometimes use their horns to pull down branches or break down branches to get closer so that they can feed on those branches. Now, unlike the bull, we'll find that the females don't have horns, This is actually quite a typical trait with antelope species which occurs in wooded areas, because horns are actually a nuisance that gets in the way, but as a bull, you still need it for fighting. However, with females, it actually allows them to simply move through that vegetation without being hindered. And generally with kudu, they're fairly alert animals. They're very attuned to sounds that's in the area. And if there's something that disturbs them, they'll very quickly pick that up. And in the case of the females, they will simply freeze. And then from there on, they will decide if it's necessary to flee. And it's amazing how you can watch a kudu just blending in with its habitat where it is by simply using those cryptic coloration patterns that it has. So now to the opposite end of it, in the Kalahari, where we also often find large open spaces, and quite a few of the species of antelope that we do find here, like the springbok, which we saw yesterday afternoon, we'll actually notice that both male and female has horns. And the reason for this, the female having horns, is she needs those to protect herself as well as her lamb. So one of the fascinating things that I do find about the horns of antelope species is that they are coated with keratin, and this keratin is one of the hardest substances that we can find out here, and it's basically indigestible to anything, with the exception of a small little grey moth, which will occasionally lay its eggs on top of these horns. And this little moth is actually related to the cloves moth, and it has the unique ability of breaking keratin down and feeding on it and recycling that back into the ecosystem as a nutrient and mineral. So unlike antlers, which we find with many of the northern hemisphere species, horns are permanent growths. Yes, you are. I just have unfortunately forgotten that formula, how to determine the age, but you can use the amount of spirals and ridges to determine the age.
Just got the Fulda Geese there again.
We're just panning out from the horns, and our wildebeest has come closer to come and investigate what we are doing. So quite often what we do find with quite a few of the animal species is what they will display as a predator inspection, where they will actually come in a little bit closer to come and see what the disturbance is. And it's always better to keep your eyes onto the potential threat and actually alert the potential threat by snorting to allow it to know that you are aware of it and that it doesn't have an element of surprise that it can use against you. So coming back to the wildebeest, the species that we have over here is referred to as a blue wildebeest, alternatively also known as a brindled gnu. And the name gnu comes from the call that they produce. Quite often you'll hear them alarm calling new, or contacting with one another with a very similar type of call. There's a second species of wildebeest that we have in South Africa, which is very unique to the grassland biome of South Africa, and that is known as a black wildebeest, also by the name of a white-tailed gnu, because it differs from the blue wildebeest by having a white tail tip, and it's slightly smaller. It's also a slightly more aggressive animal, and the horn structures differ slightly by being more forward and then pointing upward. There are wildebeests moving off. So quite a few of you might actually know this animal, forming part of one of the largest migrations in East Africa of mammal species, and there's approximately 2 to 2.5 million of these animals that will cross the Mara River, depending on the rain seasons, either north or southerly direction. They've got a bony inner core, not sure, so that is their, just to repeat that, they actually have a bony inner core, which the keratin is surrounding. And then one of the other things that I would have liked to have mentioned earlier is that horns are normally a single extension from the skull, or two of those single extensions, while we find with antlers of many of the animals of the northern hemisphere as that those are branched and often coated with a velvet-like material. Bacon, that's quite a difficult question to answer, but I've actually walked in areas where I've noticed horns for 4 or 5 years lying in the same position. So there's a number of different factors that will determine it. Firstly, it will obviously determine if scavengers like hyenas break it down into smaller fragments. It also will be determined by if horn moths do use the keratin sheath on the outer side as a food substance. So what we'll be doing from here is we're going to drive off a little bit, see if we can find anything else, seeing that the waterhole and the environment has gone a little bit quiet this morning, and see what we can go and find.
Send it over to Andrew for a silent segment.
And we'll be sending over to Andrew for a silent segment.
Right.
okay, hold frame.
Maybe just focus on the camel fawn first over here. So one of the prominent tree species that we often find in the Kalahari is these beautiful camel fawns. And if we look at the species name, it actually refers to as Uruloba because of the ear-shaped lobes of the seeds. So those seeds are quite often fed on by a number of species like kudu, as well as giraffe. And we find that it's actually got a very high protein yield. One of the other uses for this tree was often that the tree's roots would have been used for making quivers by the sand hunters that used to occur throughout most of southern Africa. Now, how they would make these quivers is that they will simply take the root and they will then make a fire above that area where the root has been buried, and then the inside of the root is tapped out, and then the outside layer that is covered with bark, which is a protective layer around the root, will then be used for the quiver itself. Those quivers then would often be used by that they would wrap animal skin around it, and then they would put their arrows inside there so that the arrow and themselves are safe from being stabbed with a little arrow tip. Now, one of the things I find quite fascinating about the use of arrows is when arrows are prepared with poison that they would put behind the tip of the arrow to prevent them from being stabbed with that sharp arrow and being poisoned, they would actually go away from the main section of the area where they were staying. And this is a practice that would be done by the men. And under normal conditions, children would normally be allowed with most activities, with the exception of placing the poison behind the tip of the arrow. Once those arrows are then prepared, they'll be safely put away inside that quiver. So there's a number of different things that we find that they use for making these poisons, which actually has no antidote. And one of them is a little grub, which is called a Comifera grub, which they will dig out. And they will often mix that with other plant juices and toxins in combination, and then that will then be added onto that arrow tip. One of the things that they will often do with these Comifera grubs is that they will use the horns of antelopes that they found. And there's a small little bird that we have in this area which is known as a penduline tit, and in Afrikaans a kapokvoeltjie, which are the reason of making a cotton bud-like nest structure. And then these Comifera grubs will be put inside this cotton-like structure from the nest and then placed inside the horn to prevent that the cocoon of this Comifera grub becomes damaged. And then they will take these with them and use it in times when they cannot find the grub itself. I'm not quite sure they're going to be as tasty as potato chips, but yeah, they do look like a potato chip. I'm just repeating a question from Sunshine. What do we do with animal remains that we find in the bush? We do absolutely nothing with them. we actually leave them out there so that the animals can feed on them. So nothing goes to waste within the natural system. So if we have lion or hyena that potentially killed the animal, those remains will be then eaten by animals like jackals. And in return, we also find that bones quite often gets eaten by species like porcupine that gnaw on them for their calcium content. Right.
Maybe just mention that we're getting a rain. It's right for now.
So at the moment, we're starting to get rain, and which potentially can provide us with a little bit of a technical problem a little bit later. But we're going to endure and see how it goes, and we're going to start slowly moving a little bit further up north again. You still good with the rain? It's coming from the north, though. Yeah. Must I say something? Say again? As mentioned a few minutes ago, we're starting to slowly move north. And as we turn the vehicle around, we can see that there's a lot of rain coming from the north, potentially to our direction. So most of the times that we've actually noticed is that our storms will actually approach from the north. Opposed to the eastern half of South Africa, the majority of the storms actually will come from the south and from the east. And what we also notice is that it often influences where certain bird species, like the sparrow weavers, and then also red-billed buffalo weaver that we find in the low-veld region, such as Juma, will place their nests to avoid that the rain hits the face, that side of the nest itself. So the white-browed sparrow weavers, we find that the nesting sides are often in the Kalahari on the south and side, while in the low-veld region, the nests of the red-billed buffalo weavers are quite often placed on the north and the western side of a tree or structure where they have placed their nest. So quite often, if we do drive around in some reserves, we actually might see that certain species will actually build their nests directly above trees that are inside dams, and there those nests will actually be placed randomly. And in general, where we can say that we can use it as a direction tool, in that cases we'll exclude it as a method of finding general direction. Okay.
Live. Andrew. We are speaking with you for a while. Friend.
This is Rusty. He's my favorite vehicle and we've been through all the good times here in the bush. Now, if you feel a connection to Djuma Game Reserve like I do, then we have a fantastic opportunity for you. You can have your name engraved on a brushed metal plaque just like this one, and we will attach it to Rusty so you can always be with us on safari in spirit. We will even send you a digital photograph once your plaque is mounted on Rusty. Spaces are limited, so grab your spot now.
Goodness, look at its wobbly legs. Oh, I don't believe it. I can't believe we've actually seen it. Oh my goodness. Oh, careful, careful, careful. Oh no. Oh, it's okay, little one. Okay.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
Hello everyone, I am Yapi and I am a safari guide at Anbion Gala. My favorite animal is the lion because 99% of the time it doesn't do anything. And the 1% of the time it does, it's just awesome.
Catch up with the guides daily here on Wild Earth.
Have you been watching Wild Earth and dreamt of being right there on safari with one of the guides? Well, now you can. Wild Earth is offering you a chance to buy a ticket to dream. You or a friend can hop on board a live Wild Earth show and join our guide on safari. The ticket is redeemable at any of our locations, anytime in the future. Only a limited number of tickets are available, so don't wait. Get your ticket now and start dreaming. Terms and conditions apply.
Andrew.
Again, everyone. We were soaking to the bone. I have completely changed my attire, so we're a little bit drier and feeling rather sorry for these impala here. Of course, animals are used to the rain, and I do think some of them relish it on their skin, some more than others. But they still have to be active. They still have to eat. But they do get slightly nervous when the weather is not so great. Low ambient light, thunder, there was thunder earlier in Juma, and wind. Rain can also, the rain this morning was so loud that there's no way the impala could hear any predator approaching. That's if any predators were brave enough. I remember last year, We went on a night bumble and a huge storm rolled in. Lightning, thunder. We were obviously not live with no technical equipment on the vehicle, so we decided it's time to head home. And we spotted leopard eyes looking at us in quarantine. It was Tingana, and he was using the storm to hide himself. It was already nighttime, he's already camouflaged, but he was using the storm, and he jumped out of the bush and caught an Impala lamb right in front of our eyes, and then he brought the lamb to the car, which was lovely. Thanks, Tingana. But they will use the cover of the storm. It makes prey species just like these Impala here very nervous. You can see them shaking their hair and and all the water droplets are going everywhere. It's just like when my dog gets wet. We always try to be ready to avoid getting covered in water when she shakes, but we miss it every single time. I have no idea, but I don't think so. I think it's only humans that catch the flu. I've never seen an Impala with the flu. Animals can get sick. You have to remember they live an entirely different existence from us. They're exposed to different pathogens, to different bacteria, to different diseases and toxins in the environment. I think, Yuan, if I just roll back a bit, we'll manage to get the rest of the herd and the lambs. But that's exactly why I went and changed, because I'll end up with the flu if I stayed wet. I think Andrew has braved it all. Lots of lambs. Okay. Can you get them from here, Johan? Gwen, yes. So the female impalas are very, very difficult to age because they don't have horns. But the Impala rams, yes, you can age. I have a wonderful image on my phone that I'm not able to show you, but you can really look at the horns on the Impala, and it's not just the grooves or the turns. So normally at around 4 months, which is very, very young, the males will have what can only be described as little stumps, little nubs. That's when you can really start to see that a lamb is a boy from a distance. You know, when you start to see those nubs. 6 months, they get a little bit longer. Of course, 8 months, they get even longer. At 14 months, there's a bit of a change. And from the length, you start to see them bend slightly, have an outwards curve. Then from 14 months to 22 months, there's an even drastic change. And there's a real bend. That one is perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. How did you know that, Johan? That's about a 22-month-old male right there. Or maybe younger, maybe 20 months. But they start to really bend. And then at around 2 years, or maybe just a little over 2 years, they'll start to make their first twist, first turn. And from then on, they start to continue to turn as they go upwards. And that's how you age them. It's a little bit difficult to explain verbally, but yes. That's a young male right there, short, and maybe he's a little bit, not that one. You see how that one, they've made a turn, but they're now going straight upwards. So that male is definitely a lot older than 2 years. He's a fully grown ram. I would probably put him at about 5 years or so. So in answer to your question, yes, you can age a male, a ram at least, by their horns. You can hear the woodland kingfishers now that the rain has stopped. Miss Sunshine, can you please get over here right now? Because we are seriously lacking some sunshine. We need you, Miss Sunshine. Yes, when they're nervous, they stop eating. Of course they do. They've got to concentrate. They've got to focus. Whether they could smell something, whether there's something in the air, predator, a wet, smelly cat, a hyena, whether they've heard something. Could be a noise, even just a branch cracking or vocalization, or whether they can see something. Impalas are highly visual. They've got big almond-shaped eyes. They're quite large, so they can see. They can detect movement. They get very suspicious when they see something, and that's exactly why leopards stay still for so long. You watch a leopard stalk, it's a long process, because they know they can't give themselves away because the impala will detect their movement. So as soon as they detect something, they immediately stop. They may still chew the cud for a while, but if they really feel something is imminent, danger is ahead, they'll swallow and they'll focus all their attention on their senses. And sometimes it can take impala a long time before they really think, yeah, that was nothing, I'm going to keep eating. Or that was something. Something's wrong. But normally when they're feeding like this, maybe, let me see if I can continue to reverse so we can get better views. Yes, I think I can. Bear with me. I'm so soggy right now. But yes, normally when they're... Oh, sorry, I'm reversing. You went into the bush. I can't see anything behind me right now. Normally there's always one lookout. So when they're feeding and everything's calm, there's no sort of immediate threat, there'll be always one impala with his head up. And that's part of the herd life. That's why they're in a herd. It benefits them because of their size. They're much bigger than a steenbok. They don't really blend in so much. So therefore, they opt for the herd life, which makes them really obvious, but they can use each other. There's normally one always looking out, always got his head up when the others are feeding. And of course, they rotate this role. And then that one will start feeding, and then another one will be the lookout. If you look at an impala herd, it's very rare to see every single one of them with their heads down, at the same time. Someone's got to stay alert. All the others are engrossed in eating the delicious grass, but one of them has to be appointed to be the lookout. But Dr. Rocky Balboa, once again, you're asking, do impala, kudu and wildebeest pretty much eat the same thing? Yes and no. So impala, believe it or not, are what we call mixed ecotone feeders. And that's actually one of the main factors, one of their specialized adaptation that leads them to being so successful. They're probably the most successful antelope species out here. And what it means is that they can graze and they can browse. So depending on the season, the environment, what nature has to offer, they can graze the grass, all the delicious, palatable grasses, but they can also browse the leaves. So that means that they can sort of inhabit ecotone regions. They can make use of transitional zones between two types of habitats, grassland and woodland. And that's actually why, that's one of the main factors why they have such high parasite loads, because they are mixed ecotone feeders. And that's why you will...
Henry coming for fire?
Oh my goodness, there's other humans out in this weather. I got a fright there. That's why you'll see them grooming constantly, because of the high parasite load that they do receive. And that's also why they've always got oxpeckers on them. So they can be browsers and grazers. Now, when it comes to kudus, you were asking about kudus, they're actually mostly browsers. They will sometimes nibble on new grass shoots, but generally speaking, they browse. And that you can sort of see that by their long neck shape. They'll go for the leaves, fruits, flowers, even succulents, tubers. I think that's the rain coming down again. So they're slightly different. They're not mixed ecotone feeders like Impala. That's a unique specialization to Impala. So the kudu are definitely browsers. And then I think the last one you were asking about were the wildebeest, and they prefer grazing. So you won't see them browsing. You'll see their head always down on the ground, grazing the different species of grass that we get out here. So they're all different, actually. Similar, but different. In answer to your question, Dr. Rocky Balboa. My brother used to force me to watch all the Rocky movies. Not that I enjoyed them. Critter Freak, I agree. You're glad the lambs are growing big and strong. Me too. We're reversing slowly. If I reverse anymore, we are going to be in our camp. I'm very close to camp. But I'll go back a little bit more and see if we can get you better views. But yes, me too. A lot of the lambs didn't make it, sadly, which is exactly why they have that survival strategy of flooding the market. The rutting season means they all mate at the same time, and therefore they all drop their lambs at the same time, give or take a week or so. Because they know that, oh no, don't run away, guys. I don't mean any harm. They know that all the predators will want to feast on the lambs. Every single one of them. They're the perfect picking for predators. And that's why they know they'll lose a lot of lambs. So if you think about it in the opposite way, if they didn't flood the market all at the same time and they had staggered breeding and staggered birthing, then the lambs would drop all throughout the year. And therefore, each time a lamb was dropped, the predators would most likely come along and think, I'm going to have this one. And then the next day, oh, this one, and this one, and this one. And their survival rate would absolutely plummet. So there's two features that make impalas so successful. Their feeding strategy, mixed ecotone feeders, and the fact that they flood the market. Their breeding strategy allows them to be incredibly successful. They're one of a kind. Quite literally, actually. They're the only member of their genus. They really are one of a kind. They come under the bovid family, but they're the only member in the Apiceros genus. Aren't you guys just great? And that's why there's so many of them. They're so numerous because they really are a buffer species. And therefore, what this means is they're so numerous because they will get taken by most of the predators. And by them being a buffer species, they're protecting all the other antelope species that are not so numerous and not so successful. So I think I'm going to take a slow bumble around quarantine, hoping to stay dry. But we are going to send you across to Andrew for another silent segment. We're still sitting with our Impala. I'm not sure we will actually find any other animals this morning. I will try. But I think everyone's hoping for the sun to burst through, even these guys. Now, for a while it was thought that Impala are able to stagger birth, so they're able to delay giving birth, the fetuses inside of them, possibly fully grown, until conditions are favourable. That is not the case, not at all. Now, the later births that we normally see around February time are normally from areas with really poor nutrients, and what that's meant is it's been caused by later conceptions. Of course, the gestation period is a gestation period. Mammals can't control that. And normally later births are just from the fact that the Impala have mated a little bit later. Now, they're all running away from something. I'm not sure what it is, but let's go forward and see if we can find any of the creatures that come out after the rains. Millipedes, tortoises, land snails. Even the butterflies will start fluttering their wings soon, I think, to dry off. Jonathan, you were asking, sorry, I almost forgot there. Are Impala active at night time? No, not really. They tend to, after you, on you go. They tend to rest at night time. They huddle together on quarantine as a herd, as a group, normally in open areas, which quarantine means that it's perfect for open areas so that they can see and hear and smell everything that's going on around them, because the predators are primarily nocturnal. They're staying very huddled together. Let's go for a bumble though and see if we can find anything else. Oh my goodness. The roads are soaking. Puddles galore. And see if we can find anything else coming out after the rains. You'll have to repeat that question one more time, Jared. I did not get that. Like python. So you're asking, how do the constrictors deal with the horns of an animal? If they swallow, they can swallow them whole with horns, the big ones. And I'm not sure how they deal with the horns. I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question. I really don't know. When I spent time in the Amazon jungle, in the Ecuadorian Amazon, there was a lot of anacondas, and we had to be really, really careful. We had to bathe in one of the small sort of tributaries, very shallow, and that's the only way that we could clean ourselves. We had no electricity, no fresh running water, and we were looked after by some local indigenous shamans. And one morning we woke up and the energy in the air was low. There was something wrong. The shamans couldn't speak much English, of course, but they're people of the forest, so they were there to protect us. And it turns out their grandfather had gone to bathe at one of the deeper tributaries, and yeah, an anaconda got him. They found the anaconda, and I do believe they killed it, which is just what they do over there. And it was so long, I think it took 11 of us to all hold up. Yes. I love snakes, but that is an extremely large organism. But I'm really sorry, I don't know how they deal with the horns. My brain is soaking. I'm flooded. We have a wet squirrel here. Hello, squirrel. Did you enjoy the rains? I love seeing all the soggy animals. Oh, there's two. This is actually the exact dead tree that we released the scorpion yesterday, the tree creeper. It was deciding to creep inside my room. Beautiful scorpion, but he's living somewhere inside this dead, fallen over tree. And this is actually the perfect example. So when elephants push over trees, yes, it's sort of immediately destructive, but overall, it provides a new habitat. So this entire dead tree, which is broken in multiple pieces, has been here for a long time, will provide a lot of different aspects of it, from the inner bark to the outer bark, or just generally underneath the logs, will become a habitat for many of the ground organisms, large and small. Well, that's a boy. That is definitely a male squirrel. They have phenomenally large testicles to their body size. There is no mistaking a male squirrel. And they're very promiscuous in nature. And that's one of the reasons that the males are, well, let's just say weighed down by this specific piece of their anatomy. They mate fast and they mate furiously. There's no mistaking it when it comes to identifying. And they actually leave track marks. Yes, when you see the tracks of a squirrel on the soft sand, not on a day like today, you can see the imprint of the male's testicles. Yes. So you also know the sex of the squirrel that you're tracking. Have they disappeared? Oh, no, I can see them. They're walking on the grass now. I'm trying to explore what delicacies they can find after the rains. They eat insects. That's exactly what they're looking for. Are squirrels considered a pest? Sorry, my earpiece is full of water. A pet? Oh, sorry, I thought you said pest. Oh, now I'm confused. Johan's saying pet. Is it pet or pests? Pests, that's the one. Out here, no. I know in the UK they obviously have a lot of issues with squirrels. And my father, at the moment, he has a phobia of squirrels. And they have nesting in his attic. So every day I get an update from my father about the squirrel situation. He doesn't want to hurt them, he doesn't want to kill them, but they're obviously not supposed to be in the attic. And in the UK, grey squirrels can transmit squirrel pox, and this is a virus which can actually kill the red squirrels. We get two different types in the UK, and the grey squirrels are generally considered vermin in that part of the world. But out here, the tree squirrels, as we call them, they're not considered pests, really. They don't enter homes. They do occasionally enter our kitchen because we have a large stash of nuts and they know the location of them. But generally speaking, not pests out here. I actually believe they're officially classified by law in the UK, the grey squirrels, as vermin. They carry viruses. They eat birds' eggs. They eat chicks. They rip bark off trees. They do a lot of damage in the UK. The grey squirrels, that is, not necessarily the red. Have we lost them, Johan? Okay, I'm going to continue going around quarantine to see what else I can find after the rains, and we're going to send you across to Andrew for another silent moment.
Bye.
I'm looking for something because Johan is new with us and I feel like he's not been properly initiated. I can't really find any animals. Oh, wildebeest, we're coming to you soon. So the initiation that I had from Mr. Brent Leo Smith must continue. If I had to go through it, so should Johan. But I can't find what I'm looking for just yet, but it should be around. The initiation process at Wild Earth used to be called, Johan, speak nice and loud. What's it called? Afrikaans. One more time into the ambient mic. And for those of you who have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, you are about to see. But for some reason, I cannot find what I'm looking at. All of you long-time viewers know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, there's Impala, so there has to be what I'm looking for. I'm not ignoring you, Mr. Wildebeest. We're going to come to you in just a moment. Why can I not find this? I've started the topic of conversation now. here we go. So, bear with me. I'm just going to hop off the vehicle to find what I'm looking for. Now, this involves collecting Impala pellets. Pellets, fecal pellets that have came out of the anus of an impala. Delightful. Now, because they are herbivores, ruminants, it is safe to touch this. I'm going to put a few on the bonnet, and then I'm going to show you the initiation process. Delightful. This one's broken, so we'll just give you a little view of the inside. Just like elephant dung, we would never touch carnivorous scat, but herbivorous dung we can touch, especially impala. It's gone through the digestive system. It's organic. So, Johan, this is a present from me to you.
Thank you.
And I'll do it myself. So if we frame up this way, what we're going to do, pop it in our mouth and spit it as far as you can. Show into the puddle.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at this, but I'm going to try. And this is a game. I don't know the history, but I know that this was my initiation to wild earth. So we'll pop it in our mouth, Johan, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, and then we do it, okay? You ready? We both failed. That was awful. Some people can get it really far. It's a real competition, isn't it, Johan, in Afrikaans? People take it very seriously, and that was awful. I didn't even get it past the car bonnet, and the wildebeest ran away. We didn't get it into the puddle, I apologize. But it's a real thing, and you can put it in your mouth. But you don't swallow it. Well, I guess you can swallow it, but I don't want to swallow it. I am a vegan vegetarian, but that is not something I'm going to swallow. But it's harmless, and all the impala are looking at me thinking, why is that crazy lady eating our poop? Yes. There you go, impala fecal pellets. How was that? Did you enjoy that? Trying to entertain you in the rain. It's been a wet, soggy morning, has gone to my brain. Okay, we're going to try and find that wildebeest for you. I'm going to throw these away now. I can throw, I just can't spit. They all landed, yes. So, Johan, you are officially initiated into our team. But don't worry, anybody who's panicking and never seen that before, it's not dangerous. We're not going to get any sort of... Wildebeest is running. We did not enjoy that. We're not going to get any sort of disease or pathogens in our dummy. Hello. Now, I haven't seen the rest of this wildebeest herd in a while. Oh, goodness. Some of you are saying we should mix it up with wildebeest poop, which is much larger from a larger animal with a larger anus. So I think I need to practice my impala poop first. I'm not very good at it. I believe Mr. Brent Leo Smith was actually very good at it. I think he practices. I do not. But yes, that's a game we play. When you live in the bush, you must, well, entertain yourselves. And sometimes there's not much to entertain yourself with. But yes, the wildebeest herd, I have not seen them since the devastation. They appeared to give birth to, I think, 4 calves. And there's been loss. There's been substantial loss. And they're not sort of on quarantine like they used to be. They'll be around. I think one of the adults was killed as well. I firmly believe that's what the Talamati Pride had. But I haven't seen them. This is a male, and the males are territorial, so he'll continue to be a bit of a loner. But where's the females? Probably hiding from the rain, which is a really smart idea. They've possibly shifted due to the terror that they face. They've maybe shifted a little bit further into the drainage, but I have not seen them since that fateful day where I think they lost a number of calves, which is a stark contrast to last year. Last year they did remarkably well to retain and hold on to their calves. Jerome is once a year. It's an annual event. just like the impalas. The impalas rut once a year, when they're sexually mature, of course, and it's the same with the wildebeest, and it's normally around this time. The impala are first, and then around November, December, you normally see the wildebeest drop their offspring as well. But it's just been a bit of a sad year for them this year. Wildebeest calves are bigger than impala lambs, and it's the same principle. Born very precocial, hit the ground running. They can get away from predators, but still they're very, very small. And we watched Swazi and in the belly chase one the other day. Now it's thought that they were unsuccessful, believe it or not, but how can you tell? I mean, a wildebeest calf that small with two large hyenas, they would finish that in mere minutes. But it was fascinating to see that hyenas do hunt. They absolutely do. We just don't really see it. And of course, the calf was trying its very, very... we got a beetle of some sort. I don't think it's a dung beetle. I don't know if you're going to be able to get it now, Johan. It's gone into the... It's racing over there. A little bit further up. You see it? It's moving off to the right. One of the big black beetles. It's not a rhino beetle. I think we've lost it. Apologies. But the insect life is going to boom after these rains. I think we're going to see a lot more butterfly species. We're going to see a lot more insects emerging now from underground. Hopefully, I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but I really hope the golden orb-web spiders come out shortly. Yes. Fascinating, beautiful animals. Fierce females. So hopefully we'll see those golden webs glinting in the sunshine very, very shortly. But this rain, this heavy, heavy rain is really going to change everything here. I think in the next few days when the sun starts to shine again, the landscape's going to be quite different. So I'm going to continue my little slow bumble, head closer to home, dry home, but now we'll send you across to Andrew.
Join our Explorers program so we can keep on sharing nature with the world. For a monthly subscription, you will have the opportunity to win fantastic Wild Earth expeditions, have access to an animal identification app, receive weekly highlights from our shows, and much more. All the money will go to keeping these live safaris on air, which in turn connects a global population with nature.
My name is Taylor McCurdy and I work for Eco Training. I love hearing from all of the viewers. However, I particularly enjoy those of you who have been watching for a few years. Your questions are just so advanced and they really get me thinking. If you'd like to ask a question on Wild Earth, you need to register on our website. Once you've done that, head to the live safari page and submit your questions below the live feed.
Wild Earth is launching our brand new Explorer program with an opportunity to win a very special Wild Earth expedition. The lucky winner will get a behind-the-scenes Wild Earth experience at the magnificent and beyond Ngala Tainted Safari Camp. The prize includes a 3-night stay for you and a friend with a chance to sleep out in the unique Ngala treehouse. Become a Wild Earth Explorer and stand a chance to win this and many other prizes.
Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, it's going to be in trouble now. Oh, this is unbelievable stuff. Here comes a hippo in too. Go, Impala. There's a hippo coming in. I can't believe what we're seeing here. This is what we normally see in East Africa. It's all over. Hippo leaping at the crocodile now. Everything's gone underwater.
Expect the unexpected here on Wild Earth daily.
White flowers. You've just got me repositioning for, hold on, Is my good? It's very difficult to navigate this car when you've got your rain roof on. But we're going to show you some flowers since I really don't have anything else. And I'm not going to put any more poop into my mouth. So there you go. The white flower. As many of you probably know, it's a very iconic flower out here. But it's a favorite. It is the strings of stars. Why are they called that? Well, someone was very creative and gave the correct name. Some of the naming in animals just, upsets me greatly, and botanical names, but this one is a winner. And of course the flowers look like little stars, and there's a string of them. So there you go. Helotropium staudeneri. And basically, as I always say, the Latin names mean something. If you're ever bored, you can look up what the meaning of any species, botanical or terrestrial or oceanic, there's a meaning. And of course, what this means, helotropium, means to turn to the sun. So all the flowers on the strings of stars are turning upwards to face the sun. And the smell, I can't smell anything yet. Normally it's after the rains. That comes from the strings of stars is absolutely delicious. It smells like honey mixed with lots of rose petals and a dash of lavender oil. Maybe not exactly that, but it's delightful to the nostrils. And when you're driving, you cannot help but get that scent or that aroma fill your nostrils, and it's so delicious. It's very, very sweet. It's a sweet smell. And of course, when any plants or even trees release smells, the cluster leaf, the silver cluster leaf smell, I love it. But most people don't. It smells like very, very old, mouldy socks that have been worn by a rugby player and left in the cupboard for 6 months with blue cheese. And I love it though. And although it's not pleasant to us, all the smells are doing the same purpose. Whether they're sweet to us, whether they're blue cheesy to us or disgusting to us, they're doing the same job. The function is to attract pollinators. Pollination is such a fundamental part of our world. And Heather, yes, you are correct. Such sweet, delicate flowers. They're lovely. Actually, if you look at the purple ones behind Johan, you'll see that this is the Devil's Thorn. Another flower, there you go, bright purple and wet right now, but bright purple, the Devil's Thorn. Looks like a little trumpet. Gorgeous in colour. And it gets its name from the fruit that it produces, not actually the flower itself, as the fruit has 2 sharp thorns sticking upwards that are supposed to resemble the devil. So we managed to get through the drive in the rain, everyone. I'm glad you got to see us put Impala poop in our mouth. That's definitely highly entertaining. But of course, hopefully the sun will pop out. It's going to be nice and dry this afternoon, and we can find some predators for you all. So thank you all for jumping on board, putting up with us, your questions, your comments, and we shall see you this afternoon. Goodbye.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, everyone. What an incredibly exciting start to today's drive. We have a scorpion right in front of us, and I cannot wait to tell you all about it. So buckle up, everyone. It's time for your live safari through the African bush.